Let's go to this now. The Commission for Gender Equality says it will reach out to the Tshwane University of Technology following the brutal killing of Xaba. Now, the Commission says it is saddened by Xaba's senseless killing and the latest in a string of murders, of course, within institutions of higher learning. To discuss this further, we are joined by Commission CEO Phelisa Nkomo. Thank you so much, Phelisa, for joining us. Now, I know that you have reached out to the universities to TAT's management, and have you been able to get hold of them, and what have they to say about this situation?
Well, thank you so much and good afternoon to the listeners. We've not been able to get a response yet in relation to the TUT, but and we're hoping that they will really be coming back to us fairly soon. But for us, one of the key things that is a concern and is the fact that we actually undertook a research last year that really looked at whether the institutions of higher learning are actually geared towards dealing with gender-based violence if cases of gender-based violence emerges. And our report concludes that not all institutions are not ready, in fact, to integrate women to be part of decision-making within the management of universities. But in fact, there are actually no policies, no instruments that are in place that are meant to deal with gender-based violence. And for us, that's a really, really, a concern. So I do think that, and it's something that we felt that we needed to not only shine a spotlight, but in fact, our intention is to really organize get the institutions of higher learning into the room, again, refresh their memory about our report, but also at the same time, actually compel them to make public commitment with regards to dealing with gender-based violence within their own institutions.
Now, like you said, you've had so many recommendations that you've made to these institutions, but of course you've also engaged the Department of Higher Learning and Education. Now, what do they have to say about these recommendations that you have made?
The minister, in fact, actually, after receiving our report, the minister is really acted in as far as setting up a committee that is meant to deal with gender-based violence. We still have to see the work that committee has actually undertaken. In fact, the institutions unto which specifically that we undertook, an investigation regarding the gender-based violence framework or policies that exist actually have not really implemented anything. In their response to us when we inquired last year, they actually indicated that the COVID pandemic had inhibited them implementing any of our recommendation, which was for us a little bit of a surprise, because we of the view that the basic issues that they need to establish, firstly, a policy framework that ensures that it does not only center women around gender-based violence, but also look at the existing infrastructure to support, women who are exposed to gender-based violence, and including institutional configuration in as far as infrastructure to make it sure that when women gender-based violence, whether it's in a form of or it's in the form of jokes, for example, which happens a lot, by the way, amongst young people and within institutions. Women specifically haven't actually get support through social work or psychologists in the institution. So, I mean, we do think that there is really, really something that needs to be done with this matter. And I think the death of Ms. Xaba is just one too many. And we know that in the last decade, in fact, we've really, really been raising the issue of gender-based violence. But also fundamentally, what also shines the spotlight on this issue is that not only institutions don't have policy framework, but conversations about gender-based violence has not really started. So it also means that the conversation at an institutional level and that it be part of a culture of public discourse has not started, let alone the fact that young men have not been brought into the conversation. They have not actually taken leadership. It's only women who are victims and also survivors of gender-based violence who are really leading the cause. And we're not going to be able to deal with gender-based violence without men as being part of the conversation.
Yeah, there seems to be no end to GBV on our campuses. But of course, the criminal justice system, would you agree that they also need to try and speed up processes when it comes to GBV?
I can't agree more with you. In fact, the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence calls for accountability and leadership, but also fundamentally access to justice. So in the ecosystem of access to justice, there's a policing system, for example, which in fact to date, women, tell us that they actually experience secondary victimization, and they're of the view that the policing system is not ready to actually receive or support women who have experienced gender-based violence. And we know the issue around DNA, the delay on the testing for DNA. I mean, last year we were sitting with 2 years ago, we were sitting with about 117,000 DNAs that have not been tested. And we know that, of course, justice delayed is justice denied. So we actually are calling on the policing system and the court system to really work together and fast track gender-based violence. But at the same time, we also believe that we want to invite South African society because, preventative measures are one of the best mechanisms that we need to invest in this country, which is in the NSP on gender-based violence. One of the commitments it makes around the social change, the theory of social change, is to ensure that, in fact, after today, we should not be experiencing any gender-based violence. So South Africans have to really talk about the impact of gender-based violence, the violence that we experience in homes and in communities, and that, in fact, we have to talk about the impact of patriarchal system in families and the stereotypes embedded into it and the perception that men have and the fact that they actually see themselves as being superior and having control in the bodies of women, and that they have a right to do anything they please. And I think one of the key things that the theory of social change calls for is public education and actually, the notion that human rights are also women's rights, that women are entitled exactly to the very same security that men enjoy in society. And that's really, really the cornerstone and the critical pillar of the theory of change that the NSP proposes, that we actually need to get involved, educate each other at family level during dinner time, and really talk about human rights and the fact that women are entitled for exactly the same rights that men enjoy in society.
Yeah. It seems like it's a broken record. We keep on talking about more needs to be done when it comes to GBV. But let's talk about Xaba's case specifically. Will you be following the movements when it comes to this case?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the key things we've reached out to the Xaba family. That's one, but also two, we are going to actually really seek an audience with TUT management to make it sure that we actually get a very clear plan in as far as what is it that they're planning to do in relation to dealing with future gender-based violence. We're going to be engaging with the police and as well as the Minister of Justice to see through what is it that they're planning to do with regards to dealing with a Xaba case and even other cases of other women that really been sitting, whose files have been sitting in the police gathering dust because, the claim is that there's no sufficient evidence because the DNA tests are still with the police. So I do think that, we really, really put a lot more pressure. And I'm also calling for civil society organizations, ordinary South Africans, is that we actually must demand for for a system that protects women and that makes sure that it grants exactly the same rights for women. Women must not live in fear and be scared of walking in the dark. Women must not be scared of breaking up with men when they feel that they don't want to be part of the relationship anymore. And I think we need to really demand for a society where women can walk freely without fear wherever they are.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Of course, it's always important to talk about these issues, and thank you so much for the work that you are also doing. That was the Commission for Gender Equality, Phelisa Nkomo. They're just seeking a meeting basically with TAT management about the gruesome murder of third-year student Ntokozo Mayenzi Xaba.